Welcome back to My Classic Car. Our backdrop this week is the Vintage Thunderbird Club International's North Central Regional Convention held this year in Springfield, Illinois. To most, the 58 through 66 models represent the best of the four-seat Thunderbirds, and in a few minutes we'll view several of these vintage cars. But first, here's this week's Classic Designers and Engineers feature. The subject is Tom Hoover, the man known as the father of the Chrysler Hemi.
Tom Hoover was an engineer at Chrysler during the golden age of the auto business. In 1955, after he earned his master's degree from Penn State, he moved to the Detroit area and began working for Chrysler. He remembers growing up around cars in Pennsylvania.
Well, my father had been forever, really, from my perspective, an automobile mechanic in the old hometown here. And therefore, I was around the garage a lot. And in my formative years, it was the Chrysler garage in town. And that was an influence. When I went out to Detroit to interview, two things really reached me. One was that there was an A311 engine, one of the early Hemis that had been prepared in a special program for Indianapolis. Anyway, there was one of those running. Oh, brother, boy, was I impressed. As the tour continued, we passed the transmission endurance lab. And this is a permanent impression as well. There was a C300 running on transmission endurance in the transmission lab. And this thing would just go continuously. Oh man, that was the song, that was the music I wanted to hear.
Tom was bright, ambitious, and loved cars, particularly race cars. He and Wayne Erickson were the prime instigators of the famous Ram Chargers, the unofficial drag racing group of Chrysler engineers who made a name for themselves in the late 50s and early 60s.
It was a very casual, loose confederation, if you will. We began meeting at, usually in the cafeteria at lunchtime. I ran in what was called C-Gas, and I won the Nationals in 1960.
By 1961, management at Chrysler had taken notice of the successes the Ram Chargers were piling up, and Tom became engineering coordinator of the racing program. He remembers a match race against Don Nicholson's 409 Chevy that proved to be one of the turning points.
The announcer asked the crowd if he'd like to see a match race between the Dodge and the Chevrolet that had won the race. Nicholson agreed, and we sure agreed. Well, we had a 2 out of 3 match race, and we won. And the crowd went bananas.
Although Tom worked on many racing projects, he is known today as the father of the 426 Hemi.
What we did was we tilted the head like this. So that if you look at a cross-section of the engine now, you'll see that a center line, a split between the two valves, doesn't go down the bore center line. Rather, it's at an angle. And this allowed the rocker to be short enough, it allowed the push rod to miss the bead on the head gasket, and it made the engine narrower enough. So I think that's the origin of all this father of the Hemi stuff that you hear. Just that one idea.
Tom Hoover, a classic engineer and father of the 426 Hemi.
Hey, welcome back to Springfield, Illinois and the Vintage Thunderbird Club International's North Central Regional Convention. Let's walk around and take a look at some of these beautiful birds. Joe, this is a stunning 63, meticulous restoration, best of show winner at several shows. Let's show the folks the unique way the top goes down and the hydraulics that run it.
Okay.
I would say that was poetry in motion. You don't have much room for anything back there anymore, do you?
Probably a magazine.
Steve, this is a 62 Sports Roadster that's particularly rare because of the M-Series engine.
Yes, that's a tri-power, which is 3 deuces. That was rare to 62 and 63.
And the other things that make it a sports roadster are the emblem and the wire wheels.
Yes, those are Kelsey Hayes wire wheels that also were 62 and 63, and the tonneau cover and a grab bar.
And the only official sports roadsters were these years?
Were in 62 and 63. They also had them in 64, but they weren't serial numbered.
A 61 convertible official Indy pace car. Mike, this has got to be pretty rare.
This is one of 34 actually produced for the 61 500-mile race. 33 of the cars were called festival cars, and they featured the black leather interior. 34th car, the actual pace car, had a white leather interior, and of course it was taken home by A.J. Foyt. That was his first win at Indy.
How many of them are left?
That we know of, there are 4 and still in existence.
Roger, this is one of the more uniquely optioned 60 birds I've ever seen, with the Continental kit and the trunk antenna, but it's the sunroof that caught my eye. Can you tell me about it and show me how it works?
Yeah, it is a very rare car. Of about 90,000 total build in 1960, only 2,500 had this factory sunroof on it. It's a very rare car. The only time they used this roof was in 1960, prior to going into the early 70s when they were power operated. This slides the same way, but it's manually operated. And then locks to seal it. Unlocks and slides back.
It's a beauty. This stunning 64 is similar to a car I had several years ago. And seeing this one makes me wonder, why ever let it go? I think we've all had that feeling about one car or another. This week's feature is about a very special Thunderbird known as the Battlebird. This legendary 2-seat Thunderbird was one of 2 built for the '57 racing season. Today it's the only one in existence. Well, here we are today at Thunderhill Park Raceway in Willows, California. If you hear some race cars in the background, there's a reason for that. I'm with Bo Cheadle, the owner of this piece of Ford racing history. Bo, welcome. And Gil Baumgartner, the restorer. This is a pretty rare bird. Bo, it's the Battlebird. Tell me about this baby.
Well, it's one of 2 Ford factory race cars that Ford built in 1957, and the other one's been destroyed, so this is the only one left in the world. And the car went 205 miles an hour at Daytona Beach in 1957, one way. It couldn't duplicate the run because it overheated, so that didn't go in the record book, but it was in all the media that it went 205 on these skinny little tires, which is faster than I would like to drive it.
I hear you. Now, I can't imagine it looked this way when you bought it. You brought Gil in to make it look this way, is that right?
Right. Gil is an old friend of mine and is the authenticity chairman of the National Thunderbird Club, Classic Thunderbird Club International. Gil worked his magic on the car after doing a lot of heavy research so that we did the car back exactly the way it was.
Well, now, under the hood here, Gil, it started out with a Ford 312, but what's under there?
Well, it's a 348, and of course it's highly modified with fuel injectors. Externally it still looks like a 312 except for the headers, fuel injectors, and the magneta. Internally, of course, it's a lot different, and the horsepower is a lot different. But when we got it, of course, we didn't have the injectors, we didn't have the magneta, we didn't have this manifold. This had to be prefabbed, and it did have the headers, which still has the original number stamped on them. And Ford, the racing people at that time stamped a lot of numbers on the parts.
Is that the same as these numbers here?
Yes, it is. These numbers were on the car originally prior to racing, and they're, well,
they don't look quite the same there.
Well, that one's flipped over because of the stencil. Evidently, they just painted it over here, then held it the same side over there, and repainted. So we put it back exactly like it was.
Even if it was wrong.
Even if it was wrong.
But it's authentic, by golly.
We tried to copy it as authentic as we could possibly do it. Suspension-wise, the spindles are Lincoln. The brakes are Lincoln brakes, heavy-duty brakes. The brakes in the front are Ram air-cooled. The brakes in the rear have a little electric motor on there with the ducts running to them to cool those.
Well, let's go on around back and show me some of the other things you had to do to bring this back. You did some pretty serious fabrication, didn't you?
Well, there was some serious fabrication that took place, but however, a friend of mine, Bob Chambers in Vacaville, California, fabricated this piece, and this is actually a copy of the original from a picture of the original, and there's actually 8 pieces of flat sheet aluminum in that, and of course he had to cut the suit and beat the fit to make this part. He also fabricated the tonneau cover, the windshield,
How about the tanks in this car? What does it have?
Fuel tanks, it has 2 tanks, a 20-gallon tank down below and an 18-gallon in the trunk.
Tell me some of the interesting features of the inside.
Well, I guess the the dash is obviously not a stock Thunderbird dash. The plexiglass windscreen doesn't stop a lot of wind. It's got the gauges that you'd expect in a race car. Water, oil, pressure, and temperature.
And what do we have over there?
That's
behind the
an
aluminum
oil
shield.
cooler on the other side over there.
The pipes come right out the side.
Right, and they're heat wrapped. That's probably not totally original, but they're,
It's got to make for a more comfortable ride.
well, more than anything else, it keeps it from baking the paint off the side of the car.
Well, that's pretty expensive paint too, I understand. So,
Yeah, I can vouch for how expensive the paint was.
well, okay. Well, let's get on with it. Let's take this baby out and run it around.
I'm ready.
Okay. As this 40-year-old race car roared to life and began building a head of steam, my first impression was, boy, this is one strange-looking bird. Its profile reminded me of an aircraft carrier. Bo had not driven the Battlebird for more than a couple miles since the restoration was completed, and unfortunately, a couple of miles was all it would travel today. Our taping ended shortly after it began when Bo signaled that he had a problem. That's the most you've driven this thing, isn't it?
The most it's been driven in 30 years, I'm sure.
That's your run?
That didn't run too well. We have a little clip fell off the throttle, and so you couldn't get any throttle. It just idled when this fell off, obviously.
Well, it just didn't need a movement at all.
Yeah, it's probably maybe a 2-cent part. About the $500,000 car. Does it every time.